Hello plant friends, my name is Jimmy. I'm a doctor and tropical plant hobbyist in LA, and this channel is about plants. So one of the things I get asked about pretty often is fertilizers. So probably like 1 out of every 5 questions is like what fertilizer I use, what fertilizer I recommend, how often, how much. I want to back off from that a little bit and talk about puberty. And so let's talk about puberty for a second, because I think that pretty soon you'll understand why I'm talking about that in regards to fertilizer. And then when we talk about fertilizers, hopefully it'll just be in a different mindset or perspective for you guys. Puberty, as many of you guys know, is a hormonal change that happens at a certain age. It motivates or stimulates a growth spurt. So puberty is the stimulus. The end result is the growth, but during this puberty and this rapid growth, we need good nutrition to sustain it. So in this model or example, nutrition just helps sustain growth, right? Nutrition does not act as the growth stimulus. I think that's the key that I want people to understand, is that nutrition doesn't act as the growth stimulus. It's just a necessity to sustain the growth. I think that we can agree that if there's nutritional deficiency, it negatively impacts growth. If you don't have enough nutrition, it's not like you don't grow. You still do, because puberty is sort of stimulating that. It's just that in a state of nutritional deficiency, you're not going to reach your growth potential. If we really ramped up that nutrition, we don't see a huge equal ramp up in growth. You can ramp up nutrition to this optimal level to get optimal growth, but anything above that doesn't really necessarily improve growth. It actually leads to other problems: hypertension, diabetes, obesity. So really the goal is for optimal nutrition to reach optimal growth, right? Undernutrition will lead to, a deficiency in growth, as in you won't reach the growth potential that you're capable of in your genetics. But then overnutrition can cause some harmful side effects. All right, so that's enough about puberty. Let's talk about fertilizers and plant nutrition, right? So I think that when we're talking about fertilizers, a lot of people forget about plant puberty, or the equivalent of plant puberty. And they think that fertilizer is the direct stimulus for growth. Right? They're like, well, my plant's not growing, so what fertilizer should I use? Or my plant's not growing, let me use more fertilizer, or change the fertilizer that I'm using. So that's where I want people to sort of, rearrange or change their perception, is that most of the time the fertilizer is not the growth stimulus. There has to be some other growth stimulus, right? There has to be plant puberty. Right? And I think a lot of us will understand what some of these triggers for plant puberty are, right? Seasons, right? We're all familiar that fruit trees, right? There are seasons where fruit comes out, and there are other seasons where the tree is just dormant, right? And fruit trees are a perfect example, because, you can fertilize during the growth season to help the fruit and the growth while the plant is growing, right? While there's a stimulus happening. But if you fertilize during the off season, it's not like the plant will suddenly spur fruit, right? Because the fertilizer is just aiding and contributing to the growth. And the stimulus is actually the growing season. So I think that stimulus for growth, we can talk about seasons, we can talk about temperature, we can talk about sunlight, we can probably talk about hormones, right? I think there are certain hormones that maybe in worm castings or aquarium water, right? I think some organic matters can act as growth hormones or growth factors for plants. I don't know exactly what they are, or the names or whatever, but I think that there are certain organic matters that can affect plants and be that stimulus for growth. So when is fertilizers recommended or needed or useful, right? I can think about a couple scenarios. So one is if the soil mixture or the potting mix or the potting composition or the substrate composition is poor in nutrients. When does this happen? I think that a lot of growers in tropical climates or climates where there's a lot of rain, they use extremely well-draining soil or a well-draining substrate like cocoa husk or lots of perlite or bark. When you're using an incredibly well-draining substrate, a lot of those substrates don't provide good nutrition. So you're in this state of nutritional deficiency, and in such a state, fertilizers will likely benefit you. The second scenario is if you do have access to, organic matter or materials that may act as growth factors, worm castings, reused aquarium water, right? I think that outside, those two scenarios, people should be very, very hesitant and cautious about using fertilizers, especially in the off season, right? During winter, fall, where your plants are really not growing. When it's cold outside, you're lacking sunlight, you're lacking the temperature, you're lacking the season. I think that less is definitely more. I think it's always better to be safer unless there's some proven benefit, right? I think a lot of the times there's really no proven benefit. A lot of us, probably fertilize. We really don't know if it's working or not, but we do it anyway. I know this is a bit of a different take on fertilizer and probably different from what you guys were expecting. Hope you guys enjoyed it anyway. If you did, please like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss my future videos. Till next time, happy planting.